The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hong Bin Jung. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered a pause to all military aid to Ukraine, turning up the heat on Mr. Vladimir Zelensky. This comes only days after an Oval Office blow-up with the Ukrainian president left the support of his country's most important ally in doubt. Now, the U.S. is holding up all pending military assistance until Mr. Trump determines Ukraine's leaders demonstrate a good faith commitment to peace. The administration will also review the aid to make sure it's contributing to a solution to the conflict. Now, how significant is this move to pause all military aid? And will the U.S. eventually resume military aid to Ukraine, or is this a sign of a longer-term shift in policy? Well, joining us today is Emeritus Professor Joseph A. Camilleri, who is from the La Trobe University at Melbourne, as well as a fellow of the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia and convener at the Conversation at the Crossroads. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Professor, now the pause to all military aid to Ukraine comes just days after an Oval Office blowout. And this despite the Ukrainian president posting a gratitude video message to Trump after Trump and J.D. Vance accused him of not being thankful. Does this signal that Trump is still not happy with the Oval Office incident?
Well, I don't think he's happy at all with President Zelensky and his approach to an ending of the conflict. He has made that known many times, and the fact that the President Zelensky said only a day or so ago that he saw peace as being very, very far away in Ukraine, that absolutely infuriated the U.S. president, and that in part helps to explain his response. So he wants very quick steps being taken towards some kind of negotiated end to the conflict, and he sees President Zelensky as being very slow off the mark. So this is intended to add pressure on him to change course.
I see. Well, how significant is this move to pause all military aid? Does it have a dire impact on the people of Ukraine currently facing the war?
Well, on the people of Ukraine, it will have marginal effect. The intention is to impact on the political class. The current political arrangement inside Ukraine, which has been to fight and keep fighting the Russians with relying on the support provided by the United States and its European allies. And the point is, I think this is what we need to understand about the American president, about Trump's position. He sees that as having contributed to devastating bloodshed being shed on both sides. He thinks he thinks it's gone, and this seems to be widely shared by his administration, people he has, of course, himself appointed, that it's gone for too long. It has cost the United States hundreds of billions of dollars, and he sees no concrete results emerging from it. What I think is worrying the United States is that despite all the help that's come from the U.S., and from European allies, if anything, Ukraine is doing much worse now than it was a year or a year and a half ago. And he sees no likely improvement in Ukraine's position, even if aid was to continue at the current rate. Right. I think that's the dilemma for him. There is no sign of improvement. In fact, over the last 12 months, Russia has continued to make slow but steady advances, and there's no reason to think the next 12 months will be any different.
I see. So what do you think are the strategic reasons or main drivers behind the U.S. decision to pause military aid to Ukraine at this particular time?
Well, I think he thinks it's time for a deal with Russia. And he probably, his administration is of the view that Ukraine will have to make very considerable concessions. Very considerable concessions, it's not clear what they would involve. Presumably, some of the territorial gains that Russia has made, the expectation is that they will have to be conceded. If not in full, then maybe to some considerable extent. He's already made it clear that the idea of Ukraine joining NATO is now completely off the table as far as the American president is concerned. And if he says Ukraine is not joining, that is to say, if the US says Ukraine is not joining NATO, well, that's the end of the story. There can't be an admission to NATO if the United States is opposed to it.
I see.
So I think it's a sign, one more sign, together with so many other signs, that he wants a deal made with Russia and that he wants to see, presumably, an improvement in U.S.-Russian relations in coming years. But so long as the Ukraine conflict remains unresolved, then that next step, improved relations with Russia, will be impossible to achieve.
Right. Well, officials say this pause will remain in place until Trump determines Zelensky has made a commitment to seeking peace talks. Could this pause be an attempt to pressure Ukraine into negotiations with Russia, or is it a reflection of broader frustration with Kyiv's leadership?
Well, the frustration is the two bits of your question are really one. Yes, there is frustration with the leadership of Ukraine precisely because it's not moving towards a willingness, what appears to be a willingness to negotiate. And a willingness to negotiate means a willingness to make concessions, which so far it has given no evidence of being willing to make. What concessions, to whom, what concessions the other side might make? Well, the argument is we won't know all this until we've sat at the table and we've seen precisely what each other's position is and what areas of compromise might be possible.
I see. Well, then what does the decision to pause military aid indicate about the Trump administration's broader foreign policy priorities?
Yes, well, more or less anticipated that question. I think the Trump administration is angling for two things: improved relations with Russia and a decreasing commitment to allied a decreasing commitment to allied security in Europe. In other words, an expectation that America's European allies will bear an increasing share of the burden. Now, there is a bit of a contradiction here, because if he is encouraging European allies to arm to the teeth, I'm not sure that will please the Russians either. So how he will resolve these two objectives, the possible contradiction between these two objectives, remains to be seen. An increasingly armed Europe hostile to Russia cannot possibly be to the likings of the Putin government. So we'll just have to wait and see how Trump himself and the people around him get around this dilemma.
I see. Well, given Trump's more conciliatory stance towards Moscow, how does this, decision align with his overall foreign policy approach regarding Russia?
Well, I think he probably does. I'm suspecting, as he himself has said, he's into deals. And he's particularly interested in economic deals. And he often sees armed conflicts as standing in the way of commercial, lucrative deals. And he sees great attraction in being able to have a hand in the development of Russia's very rich natural resources. And, of course, that can't begin to happen until such time as the relationship between the two great nuclear powers has improved. So I think he has at the back of his mind an improvement in relations with Russia which will bear commercial fruit over time. So I think that's probably one of the main drivers in his thinking.
I see, I see. Well, then, what impact will this pause in aid have on Ukraine's, strategic position in the conflict with Russia, especially if European countries are unable to fill the gap?
Yes. Well, I don't think people understand what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to do something in a matter of weeks. Mm-hmm. He wants action in weeks, well before the Europeans have even thought about what kind of extended or increased aid they might be able to give, and well before that aid can begin to have any impact. He's acting at breakneck speed. He wants action, and he wants it now, and he's going to show great displeasure if anyone stands in the way.
I see.
That's the reality.
Right, right. Well, how do you think Mr. Zelensky will respond to the U.S. decision to pause military aid, and what might this mean for Ukraine's negotiations moving forward?
Well, it's going to be a very tricky road for him to navigate. He's between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
He knows that if he continues to play hardball and not accede to Trump's requests, Trump will go one step further. Mm-hmm. Not only will aid not resume, he conceivably has another little card up his sleeve, and that is gradually ease sanction against Russia.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And that will be a deadly blow, of course, to Ukraine. Because it will make even European sanctions so much less effective than they are now.
Yeah.
And so the question is, yes, it's in a very hard place, and I think you will find that the Europeans will be pushing him to meet Trump at least halfway.
Right.
At least halfway. So I think that's what we can expect. Behind the scenes, away from the television screens and the microphones, they will be saying to him, you better be nice to Trump, otherwise we're all going to be in trouble.
Well, speaking of European countries as well, do you think this policy change will have any impact on the European countries' approach to supporting Ukraine in terms of military aid or diplomatic efforts?
Well, I think they're less worried about, to be honest with you, about Ukraine. They're more worried about their relationship to the United States.
Right.
And if it's the case that, at least under this administration, the United States wants to require of them an increased burden sharing, then they will have to see how they can do this. And remember that this is not going to be easy for them to substantially increase defense expenditure, presumably against a potential adversary in Russia, especially if there is a political reaction against doing that at times when the economic outlook is not so bright. So there are major problems that the Europeans have on their hands. And to be honest, despite the public rhetoric, I don't think the future of Ukraine is exactly very high on their list of priorities.
I see. Well, looking ahead, Professor, is the likelihood that the U.S. will eventually resume military aid to Ukraine possible, or is this a sign of a longer-term shift in policy?
It all depends on what Zelensky's response is. If it is more or less favorable to what the Trump administration is asking, then it may well be resumed. But those moves will have to be made by the Ukraine leadership. Otherwise, I don't see how they would be removed. So my expectation is that Ukraine will go some way towards satisfying Trump's demands, and then that might mean a temporary resumption of aid, but followed very quickly by some kind of negotiation getting underway involving Russia, the U.S., Ukraine, and maybe some other actors around the table. So all of that, theoretically, and of course, included in all of that is the conclusion the signing of the minerals deal between Ukraine and the U.S., which they claim, the U.S., claim is more than enough by way of a security guarantee than anything else. So we'd have to wait and see. At the moment, the ball is at the feet of the Zelensky administration in Ukraine to see how they respond over the next week or so.
I see. Well, for days, Trump cabinet officials have, suggested Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky to, might need to step aside here. Will this all be solved if Zelensky steps down, or is that far from possible?
Well, I don't think there is a political leader in waiting who could replace him in the near term. But I could be wrong, but that's my impression. I think the more likely thing is that he will stay, but gradually make some concessions to the current U.S. position. So I don't think he will leave or even be forced to leave, because there is no apparent immediate replacement that would in any way resolve the issues between the U.S. administration and Ukraine. So from Trump's point of view, he can stay there, but he has to begin to show concrete signs that he's willing to travel the negotiating route.
I see. Well, Professor, President Trump has done this before, put pressure on President Zelensky by withholding aid. If we just take a look back, 5 years ago, Trump held up congressionally authorized assistance to Ukraine in an attempt to get Zelensky to dig up dirt on then-rival Joe Biden. Now, that moment led to Trump's first impeachment, where he was accused of an abuse of power. Could this lead to Trump's impeachment again?
I doubt it very much. He has the numbers in both houses of Congress. Probably the position that he's articulating at the moment is going down reasonably well with a significant section of the population. I think at the moment, politically, he holds all the cards. I can't see any untoward major political crisis emerging as a result of his stance on Ukraine. But of course, he's taking up positions which are not to everyone's liking on many other issues as well. Tariffs imposed on many countries, immigration policies, etc. What all that might mean 2 or 3 years down the track, it's possible to conceive of protest emerging, but probably would be getting towards the end of his term of office. And I don't think any of this will happen in a hurry. If it does happen, certainly not specifically in relation to Ukraine, and certainly not this year, barring the unexpected.
I see. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for your time and your insights today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
That was Emeritus Professor Joseph A. Camilleri, who is from the La Trobe University of Melbourne and a Fellow of the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia and Convener at the Conversation at the Crossroads. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.